It's a busy time. This is the first time we've done this at St. Luke's. So it's I'm going to say, an experiment, and it's a new opportunity for me. I really appreciate the support that's being shown by the people that are here. And I know I talked to a lot of people that wanted to be here, but already had prior commitments, and I certainly understand that. Most of all, I want to thank our panelists. Don't they look good up here? So I'm going to start with the best looking one. That would be Angela Simmons. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support and Operations for the Hickory City Schools. And John Hall, Social Services Program Manager with the Salvation Army of Greater Hickory and the High Country. Casey McCall, Community Navigator with the Hickory Police Department, the HPD. And Andrew Isola, Homeowner Services Director with Catawba Valley Habitat for Humanity. I would like to say that when we chose the panelists, back in the spring, the missions team, which I'd like to introduce as well, I'm Jean Gay, I don't know if I said that. I'm Jean, Sandy Looney, Nancy Light, and Pastor Aaron. But we started this back before our new pastor came, and I'm getting a little bit off track, which I tend to do when I'm talking, but just a couple weeks ago, I think Pastor Aaron had been here maybe 2 weeks. We said, we need to meet, we're having an event, and she said, oh, how nice, that sounds great. When is it? Well, it's August 14th. And she said, oh, well, what do we need to do? And we said, we really don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And we did, and again, thank you everybody that is here. Pastor Aaron is new to St. Luke's. Like I say, she's, I guess, 5 weeks now. And we're just very, very happy that she's here, and she will share prayer with us in just a few minutes. But before I go on, back in the spring, we decided that we wanted as a church to see who's serving in the community. We know who's serving in the church, but we really wanted to get a good feel for what our congregation was doing and where we may have gaps within the church that people could serve, but maybe they don't know there's a position or a need, I should say, a need for serving in a certain area. So it started small, and then it sort of grew where we decided we wanted to see who's serving in the community. And of the people that responded to the survey, 61% are serving in the community or at the church in some type of volunteer capacity. And I think that said a lot about service and us being the hands and feet of Jesus. And when I say us, I don't mean just us at St. Luke's. I mean as a community, because I feel certain that if we did a survey through the community, we would have probably higher results than maybe we would think. I would like to hope that we would anyway. So out of that survey, we asked about the passion and really what people were most concerned about now, which led us to the panelists that we have tonight. The top 3 was homelessness, children, and food insecurity. And along with the homelessness was the safety, or the safe, healthy, affordable housing that we all, I know, are aware of, that is a great need, especially, I'm going to say, in this community, because right now we're focusing on this community. I think before I go on, I'll ask Pastor Aaron to come up and open us with prayer, and then we'll get started with our panel discussion.
Again, welcome to St. Luke's. I'm Pastor Erin, and there's a couple of logistics things that I want to make sure everybody knows. There are snacks in the back, some decaf coffee, some cookies, sugar-free if you need it. And then if you need a restroom, it is just directly out this door and to your left. So just in case you need to get up and go, that's perfectly fine to do so. So would you pray with me, please? Holy God, we are grateful for this community. We are grateful for the people that you have called and invited to serve and to help our neighbors in need. And Lord, we know that there are needs that we don't see every day, that we drive from our home to work, to the grocery store, and we repeat these patterns over and over and over again and never see the greatest needs in this community. So Lord, we pray that you would open our eyes tonight, that you would help us to see your children who need our care, and that you would place on our hearts an invitation to be in ministry among them, that you would call us, invite us to love them as you love them. So Lord, as we come together tonight, as we listen, as we learn, we pray that you would indeed speak to each of our hearts and give us a vision for how we might follow you more faithfully in this way. Amen.
Thank you, Erin. We ask everyone to sign in. If you didn't have a chance to sign in, if you'll raise your hand and Nancy will bring the sign-in sheet to you. We wanted to do that so we could see how many people are here. I have said several times that I wanted 40 here tonight, and I'd be happy. If we had more than 40, I'd be really happy. But I think we're here. I know we're here for a reason, and whoever's here, I'm just glad you're here. And I think we might have come close to 40. I don't know. I didn't number the sheet, so I don't know. It'll be a surprise, unless Casey's up here counting for me.
I'd have to take my shoes off.
So I'm going to share just some facts that I pulled without talking to the panelists, and some of them are dated, but I don't think any of these numbers will surprise you, but facts about homelessness in the U.S. The numbers are rising, and it's a crisis that can't be ignored. More people are falling into homelessness for the first time. Homelessness remains visible on our streets. Chronic homelessness is a long-term problem. And then in Catawba County, at the first of this year, in January of 2020, a year ago, January 2024, the latest point in time, which is a snapshot of the homelessness on a single night, and it's used to determine funding for homeless assistance programs, indicated 264 individuals experiencing homelessness. Now, I know, and we'll talk a little bit about this probably with the panel, but I'm using the word homelessness, but I know that there are other terms that are being used, unhoused, just some other terminology that goes into these counts, and I'm not going to pretend I understand them, even though I did read and I researched. But again, we may touch a little bit on that with the panel. But for now, I'm just going to refer to homelessness as our topic as far as homelessness. So, it also said in reading that there were over 1,000 calls to the 211 number, which is an information phone number that can be used by families or individuals, that the Catawba County United Way, and I don't think we've got anybody from Catawba County United Way here tonight, but they actually support that system, I guess would be the right word. So with that number of calls, over 1,000 calls, a lot of those have to do with housing, needing housing assistance, needing assistance with rent, other things like that. So it makes that 264 number probably a very low number. Of course, we're aware of the rising cost of living, particularly in housing, which contributes to the homelessness problem that we have in Hickory and in the U.S. So I want to start, and I want this just to flow real. Thank you. Who said that? That's it, Tiffany. Yeah. I should have put Tiffany on the front row. She always knows what I'm thinking. Or I could have had my good friend Linda. She, I think, knows before I'm thinking anything what I'm thinking. So, but she's putting her head down like she's not going to take me up on that offer. So, I'm going to let each of the panelists just start out by telling us a little bit about your line of work and the organization, how it interfaces with people experiencing homelessness. And I think, does anybody want to go first? Okay, John Hall.
Good afternoon. I reckon this thing's on. So, my name is John Hall. I've been with Salvation Army for 5 months. New to Catawba County. Worked in Lincoln County for 21 years. Worked at the Christian ministry that provided a soup kitchen. It was open 7 days a week, and some crisis assistance. Also worked at Hesed House. The word Hesed means loving kindness. It's a homeless shelter in Lincoln, so come to Catawba County is kind of a new, learning my way around with 21 years of experience. Homelessness is not only a Salvation Army problem, it's a community problem. As we all know, just driving up and down Lenore Ryan Boulevard, you see the sheltered and the unsheltered. It is a huge problem, as we all know. One of the things that I bring with my vision and as a teamwork, I got some great staff, great majors at the Salvation Army who believes in respect and dignity for all people. No matter who they are, where they come from. And that goes to where they lay their heads down. What we offer. It's just not go over here and lay down, and we'll see you tomorrow when you come back in. It's loving on them, respect and dignity goes a long way. A phrase that I like is, you make them feel good, then they'll do good. But if you don't make them feel good, they're gonna go back out and stay in the same, what we say, the rut. Same rut they're used to. And structure means a lot to a homeless individual. If you provide that structure day in, day out, I know it takes time. It's not going to be solved with individual. I know overnight. It's going to take weeks, months. In the Salvation Army, we have now we have program-based, level up, a hand up instead of a handout. I'm a big believer in that. So it takes time. So that's part of what Salvation Army does.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Andrew. I'm with Habitat Catawba Valley. I'm the Homeowner Services Director. I've been there about 6 years with Habitat Catawba Valley. Prior to that, I was with Habitat Darlington County down in South Carolina for about 3 years. A lot of folks have, how many of you have heard of Habitat? How many of you have been to the Habitat Restore? Wonderful. That's what a lot of us know Habitat as, is the Habitat Restore. The Restore funds our programs for our organization. We have two main programs that Habitat offers. The one that most people know about is our home ownership program. So we build new construction homes. You've seen our homes being built around the county. Or maybe you've worked on a home before in the past. But we build those new construction homes, and then we finance and sell those homes to folks. So we finance the mortgage. So our folks who are in our program are taking on a mortgage to buy a home from us. And they make those mortgage payments for the life of that loan. And when they're done making those mortgage payments, they own a home outright. They can choose to pass it on to their loved ones if they want to. It's a great way for them to build wealth, for them to create long-term housing for their families, for their kids and their grandkids. The second program that we have is a repairs program, and it's a program that not a lot of people know about. But if you own your home in Catawba County and you are not able to afford to make repairs on your home, we can help make those repairs for you. So we ask people to contribute a little bit of money towards the repairs, and then we're able to do the repairs that are necessary to help keep their home safe, warm, and dry. So that's our goal.
So my name is Casey McCall. I have actually been working in this homelessness since, gosh, it's been 16 years. I originally started about 2010 working for the Salvation Army, running their shelter and transitional housing programs. The same programs that John has now that is taken and run with it, and I'll be the first one to admit does a much better job than I did. And then my position actually came from law enforcement approached me after looking at numbers and saw that 30% of the folks that their patrol officers were interacting with were homeless. This would have been about 2018. And I say interact with, I don't mean arrest. These are just simply folks that they have gotten out with. Yes, sometimes that after that interaction, there's arrest or a citation involved. But the police department has always been trying to find alternatives to arrest. So we like to say I'm just one additional tool in their toolbox. And what that means is when our law enforcement officers interact with homeless folks that are looking to address those barriers that are keeping them in homelessness, a patrol officer will typically call me. I will go out to the scene, and then I will start going through kind of a interview kind of thing with our homeless folks and seeing what those barriers are. And while I'm doing that, I'm thinking about all the nonprofits in our community that assist me, like John, Amanda, and the folks at CCM, and others, Kindness Projects here. They do great things in our community. So ultimately, that's what it is. It's a diversion program and an attempt to keep our homeless folks out of the criminal justice system and getting them back to self-sufficiency. Because it's while our law enforcement officers respond to a lot of things involving homelessness, they're not equipped to address the issue, to spend the time, because they're first responders. It's bang, bang, bang. It's one call after the other. Our law enforcement officers take more calls in a day than some agencies take all month. So it's a very fast-paced thing. So I'm kind of like peer support / case management / advocate for a lot of the homeless that our law enforcement officers interact with. So.
Okay.
Your turn.
My turn. Hi, I'm Angela Simmons. I'm assistant superintendent in Hickory City Schools, which is the best district anywhere around. I've been here about 28 years at Hickory City and started working with our McKinney-Vento students, which is falls under the federal act for students experiencing homelessness. And probably about 20 years ago, I guess. I may have said that already. But we kind of turned it around a little bit and used the terminology students experiencing homelessness, because we don't want them to go ahead and think, I'm a homeless kid. So we kind of turned that around because that's the experience that they're in right now. We don't get a lot of funding coming into us to work with our students, because a lot of times when you're getting the funding from the federal government, local, state, all of those things, it goes into certain pots of money. Staff, building structures, electricity, all of those kind of things. So we do rely a lot on donations, a lot on grants and things like that to serve our kids. But it's whatever they need. My daughter was delivering book bags to a family today that didn't have transportation. So it's really a family approach and reaching out to them where they are. Some of the hard parts we had last year were about 126 students in our district that were experiencing homelessness. And our definition is a little bit different. This could be students who are doubled up and living with another family. They can't live on their own. They could be in a shelter. We had a family last year living in a van. It could be lots of different things where they're not able to be housed with a fixed, adequate, and regular nighttime residence. So we really rely on the families telling us, because we don't always know. And sometimes our families don't want us to know that because they're afraid that we're going to call DSS or we're going to do all these things. But it's more about getting the children the education that they need, trying to keep them in the school where they are so they're not bouncing around schools and things like that. So, I mean, it's a very rewarding and very stressful, I guess, sometimes, because you can't always give them everything that they need. We did have a kid that graduated this past year, and our school counselor took him all the way to college, got everything that he needed, enrolled him, and he is starting next week, I think. So lots of great things.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you, panel, for sharing that. Everyone hopefully got a card and a pen. We'll have, at the end of this, we'll have an opportunity if you want to write your questions. Sandy or Nancy will pick up the cards, and then we'll have I'm probably not talking into the microphone. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions from the audience, but we wanted this to flow and not take up a lot of time, so jot your questions down. I'm sure there are some, and we'll give the panel an opportunity to answer those at the end. So I'm going to start. John, who are the homeless?
Homelessness don't have a person or a face. Right now we see our oldest individual is an 87-year-old lady. You may see her walking up down the street. Then our youngest is a 3-month-old baby with a single mother. So homelessness ranges from all ages, genders.
Casey, would you like to add something to that? Anything to that?
No, absolutely. Just to reiterate what John said, he's absolutely right. The days of homelessness being that transient guy with a beard and long hair on the corner drinking booze, yes, that's there, but that's not a true snapshot of what homelessness is. There are so many variables as to why that person's homeless. I like to tell people it's not math. It's not A plus B equals C. Your homelessness can look so different from one across. It does not discriminate. Homelessness hits every demographic out there. Single mothers, elderly, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It does not discriminate. It really does take a village when it comes to providing those services. I have had clients that I have cured their homelessness in a day or two with a couple phone calls. But then I also have some that I have been interacting with for 16 years. So, homelessness has evolved a lot in the 16 years I've been here. The causes for it, a lot of mental health and substance use for the folks that I interact with. I have to reiterate that a lot of the folks I interact with, the clients that I see, are coming from referrals from police officers. You know, there is a large population of homeless folks that we don't ever interact with. They're in John's program, they're at CCM, they're in the process, so to speak. And that's great. We're so thankful for that. A lot of the folks that we interact with in homelessness due, in many cases, to their substance use and their mental health, unfortunately, are doing things that aren't necessarily legal that we also have to address. So I like to say that you have good and bad in every economic level. You know, some of the richest people I've ever met, I don't care much for. And the same can be said, unfortunately, in our homeless community. We've got some major offenders that, frankly, hide out in our homeless populations. We like to say that, you know, Casey has his clients and Patrol have theirs. Now, when those folks are ready to change the behavior, then those officers contact me. You just, like many things, they have to be ready. So.
Casey, you touched on this a little bit, and Angela did as well, but I'm going to go to, we'll start with Andrew, and the question, what causes homelessness?
You sure you're going to start with me?
Well, maybe I should start with
No, that's okay.
Andrew.
I'm
Yeah,
happy to give it
Andrew.
a go. What causes homelessness? I think there are various schools of thought, all of which probably have equal validity. For me personally, I am someone who's a very systemic thinker, and so for me personally, I believe that we create the society that we want to see. The systems that we have put in place have it's basic systems thinking. If you build a system, just like a factory, it's going to spit out the widget at the end of it. So the results that we see now with people being unhoused are a result of the systems that have been in place for decades or for 100 years even. And so for me, it's a systemic issue, that there are things that need to be changed about our overarching society, our community, our system, that would help alleviate these situations that we experience. But that is my thought, and I acknowledge there are other schools of thought on that.
Would one of the other panelists like to add to that?
Just in my experience, and it seems to be true, with my 5 months here at Salvation Army, and I've kind of break it down, and percentage-wise, if you 60% of, I think, from what my experience again, 60% of homelessness is just a broken home situation, because 60% of our folks that we see come in the shelter, they self-resolve within 30 days or less, and again, that seems to be true with all my years working in Lincolnton at the homeless shelter. So 60%, within 30 days, they're self-resolving. It's an issue at home or with family. Then 30%, they're in shelter for about 45 days or less, and that's more of an economic, issue. They've lost, employment, and it's taken, weeks, several, 2 to 3 paychecks for them to get back on their feet. Then the 10% are your chronic homelessness. One of the things I think stigmas is that, you see 15 or 20 people walking LR Boulevard, that's more likely your chronic homelessness, and people, good or bad, it says, oh my goodness, look at all these homeless people. It is bad. It is, a large number of people, but it's, it's a small number, that we look at with the chronic, and that's your serious mental health that, it's hard for them to understand and cope with structure inside 4 walls, or it's the serious, substance abuse issue. So that in my definition, that's, what homelessness looks for me.
Thank you. Next question. Did you want to add something? You don't have a chance, sorry. This one's going to be for you, Casey.
Okay.
What are the most common misconceptions about homelessness? Now, I've heard Casey answer this in several different podcasts, and I'm anxious to see if he gives the same answer, because I know that
Read me off the question one more time.
you feel challenged.
No, I'll answer it. Just
What are the
read.
most common misconceptions about homelessness?
I know I'm contradicting myself, but misconceptions that they're all drug addicts, that they're bums, they're alcoholics, for me, yes, that is predominantly the folks that I interact with often have those diagnoses, but that does not portray truly what homelessness is. Again, it's unfortunately those are the ones that we see the most. Those are the ones we get calls about as a law enforcement agency, or those that are under the influence that may or may not be impeding traffic, loitering somewhere, preventing people from going into businesses, those kind of things, unfortunately, are the ones that get kind of the bad publicity, and then we have a tendency to paint a picture that that's what all of homelessness is, and it's not. We have a lot here recently new to homelessness due to economics. First-time homeless that are living in vehicles now because their rent got doubled. The unfortunate side to that is it's legal. To my knowledge, our state does not have fair housing laws as opposed to fair rents and things like that. So a lot of our housing has had the costs have increased, the cost of materials. I'm sure Andrew can attest to that. And it's funny, it's not for lack of trying. It's my understanding that housing, it's finding contractors willing to build for such a low amount. Is part of the reason why our housing stock is the way that it is, and affordable housing is not there. I will tell you from personal experience, I have to rent. I can't afford to purchase a home in Catawba County. I'm a poor government employee, but I understand it. But I think that's the biggest misconception. As John mentioned, age it varies from infants to people in their 80s, 90s. There's really no discrimination when it comes to that.
The word that comes to mind from one of your other podcasts and me listening to them was you used the word violent, that a lot of people think homeless people, it was just put in a category that they're violent. And
Yeah. Again, it's what's perceived. You will sometimes see a homeless person on the street who's going through a mental break that may be talking to themselves and swinging their arms, and you automatically assume that person is violent. And I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm saying that it's very few and far between.
would anyone like to add to that?
We've had a couple situations this past year where so many of our families are living paycheck to paycheck. And when rent is $1,700 a month and you're working for $15 an hour, it doesn't add up. So we had a family this past year, beautiful family. Kids, fabulous. Mom was absolutely adorable. Her single and 4 kids, but paycheck to paycheck. And the house that she was in burned, and it was at a very low rent. And of course, then she's trying to find another place, and rent almost tripled of what she was having to pay at that point in time. She didn't have a place to go. So it's paycheck to paycheck, right? And one one of our trainings, one of the things we tell them is a lot of folks are one paycheck away from being homeless, or one bad accident or one bad event from being in that situation. And looking at our children that are experiencing homelessness, you can't tell them apart from others a lot of times. And it's just loving on all of them and making sure they all have what they need so they can learn and grow and, do what we can for their families to help them.
We touched on this a little bit as well, but what is the connection between health and homelessness? John? Health.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to follow up on the stigmas. I think most times stigmas is based on just people not understanding. I hate to say the word ignorance, but a lot of times it is, not understanding their story. A lot of times you say, well, they're homeless because they're lazy or they're this or that. You come to the shelter and just sit down and across the table from someone and hear their story. Understand where they come from, the generation, a generation of how they grew up and, from relative to relative, So that kind of leads into the health issue. When I worked in Lincoln, I had a 70-year-old lady who worked all of her life, was a manager of one of the restaurants in town in Lincoln, and she came to a point where she became legally blind, I think at the age of 60, and she lost everything. So health is a huge, huge factor of, we see folks coming in and just, transportation is an issue. You expect somebody to go to their work, 3 miles down the road and they've got to walk or ride a bicycle or, so yeah, health is absolutely a factor. So my goal is that we partner with as many people in the community as we can and do health and wellness. One of the things that I've been glad to do is, the last couple of months is just get the residents that's in the shelter just outside, just get them out and, they love to, shoot the basketball and, with someone battling with mental illness, and we're talking about health and mental illness, in some form or shape, all of us have some form of, things that we're dealing with. But you get someone's self-esteem up, that helps that helps them mental health. So, not everybody's seriously mental ill. They just need to be felt a part of and felt welcomed. And that's one of our goals at the shelter.
Also with health, you can't talk about health without talking about addiction, and there's a big correlation between someone's physical or mental health and using illegal substances. For whatever reason, they may not have access to treatment. A big buzzword these days is opioids, fentanyl, those kind of things. And in many of those cases, it starts out as an injury, maybe even at work. Doctor prescribes them a painkiller that then, after whatever time they quit providing it, the body has then become addicted to that substance. So then they have to go find that fix through illegal means, which is obviously not good for their health. I'm sure everybody knows the effects of fentanyl on our society. Last statistic said it's the #1 killer in the U.S. So in many cases with someone dealing with addiction, they get on that addictive substance because of their health, whether it be physical or mental. So there's a major correlation between that, but I will say we as a community, we do have services that are providing that health care. CCM provides health care. There have been some changes with Medicaid, so you have entities like Contegra and things like that are also, all of our homeless folks qualify for Medicaid now after that change. So They do have access. It's not always conducive to their schedule. Last thing I heard was Contegra is like 11 months out on appointments. So, you know, and that's a bit of a shock, I know, but the whole Medicaid thing is all still very new. And I don't think they can keep up with the sheer numbers of folks that now qualify for Medicaid. So there's a big correlation there. So.
I would say that it's not just health and homelessness, it's health and housing in general. There's a huge connection between the two. I live here in this neighborhood. Because I live here in this neighborhood, my life expectancy is 11 years more than if I were to live in Longview. The recent community health assessment that our public health did. If you live in Ridgeview, I believe the difference is 8 years, maybe. I'm not sure if anyone knows that statistic. But where you live correlates very much to what your health is. The county has the oldest housing, Catawba County has the oldest housing stock in the state of North Carolina. What that means is there are a lot of people living in homes that have mold issues, that have pest issues, that might, you know, when it gets hot in the summer, you might not be able to stay cool. When it gets cold in the winter, you might not be able to stay warm. All of those things take a toll on everyone's bodies. So it's not just health and homelessness, it's the housing in general. However good our housing is contributes to our overall health as well.
Health and poverty, maybe that's a good way to. Sorry, health and poverty. You know, we have a lot of folks in our community that are extremely impoverished, and I would say there's probably a good correlation to the economics of it all. You know, what's the average income of someone in that neighborhood versus their health? You know, that's probably a good.
Yeah, and I think positioning too is like, again, I live in this neighborhood. How many grocery stores are within a half a mile from here that I could get fresh, healthy food from? Mm-hmm. That's not the case in other parts of the county. And if I don't have transportation to drive to a good, healthy grocery store, how am I going to walk a mile and a mile and a half to buy vegetables? Mm-hmm. Where I live dictates what hospital I get sent to if I have an emergency. Different hospitals, and I'm not trying to discount the effectiveness of any hospital, but different hospitals provide different types of care, and that could have an impact on someone's health. Mm. So where you live has a huge impact on your health. Mm.
So we've talked a little bit about the high cost of housing and the lack of safe housing. What other obstacles do people who find themselves homeless have to overcome in able to get housing?
So for ours, a lot of it is just navigating the system. Because you go here, well, you can't do this until you go here to get this, but then I don't have a vehicle to take me from point A to point B. And then when I'm in point B, I forgot to check a box on something, so then I have to go back over here. So it's just navigating and knowing what to do with the system. And for some of our Hispanic families and things like that, it's just the fear of government in some places and in some ways. And then some families have been involved with HPD on negative things and social services in negative cases when actually there's ways that they can help the families. And fear is some of it too, I think.
When you often need to remember too that it's not just paying rent. In most cases, you've got to pay a security deposit, which in most cases is equal to a month's rent. You know, finding rental property that meets your needs. You know, do you have a disability? You know, do you have 5 kids? You know, landlords put a limit sometimes will put a limit as to how many people can be in the home. You know, we unfortunately run into that a lot with homeless individuals that have the biggest of hearts that invite 5 of their friends to come live with them as soon as they get an apartment. But then in most cases, your landlord will only allow you like 2 weeks before they either have to be on the lease or be out, or you, the renter, gets evicted. And so, and then that's, patrol officers are sent out, and sometimes you have to physically remove someone from an apartment because, they had the best of intentions, but broke that lease. Your rental history follows you. So that's often an issue where we as providers have to be an advocate to the landlord and say, hey, I know Johnny has, rented from you before, ripped doors off walls, put holes in sheetrock, but he's changed. He's been through this treatment program. He's done this. He's done X, Y, Z. Please give him another chance. Does it always work? No. But that's, and I'm sure there's a lot more other issues, but those are ones that come to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll mention the word transportation, which we all hear the transportation issue. I know familiar with the Greenway, has a designated route, but we can get homeless individuals housed. The problem we see is how they going to get to the appointments, how they going to get to work. If it's not on the Greenway route. Another thing is once we get individuals housed, if there've been chronic homelessness involved, someone's lived in a tent, someone's lived in a shelter for a year or two, it's that follow-up case management. Someone calling them and checking in with them, because people can get the first month's rent, the deposits, but what happens when they have that next major crisis? Someone needs to be kind of following along with them for at least 6 months. If we can keep people that's coming from a shelter to housing stable for 6 months, then the success rate goes up even higher.
Yeah, the economic argument that we make is that housing is where jobs go to sleep at night. And so if you have a job if you have rent, in order to pay that rent, you need a job. In order to have a job, you need transportation. If you've got kids, you need childcare. There's all those other things that are maybe not direct housing costs, but they're certainly indirect housing costs. It's more than just rent.
One thing that I personally have knowledge of is that not every homeless person is without a job. There's a lot of people in the community that have jobs and are dedicated to those jobs, but they're still homeless for a lot of the reasons we already mentioned. But that leads me to a question: how difficult is it for a homeless person typically to get a job, to seek employment?
Yeah, I'll just follow up with. Currently, we have 4 men who's in our emergency shelter. They work third shift, so they come into shelter, check in, eat supper, and at 10 o'clock, a couple of them have bicycles. So that's part of one of the things we're doing also at the Salvation Army is providing a bicycle for anyone who can get to work. Instead of walking, to cut the time. So we provide bicycles for them, but it's getting them to work. And also, in my experience, folks can get a job very easy. There's plenty of jobs. So the stigma is like, well, if they go to work, that would support them. But they can get jobs, but they don't have those life skills. That conflict resolution when a boss man ticks them off or a coworker gets mad at them. They'll quit. They'll quit within 2 or 3 weeks. Then that cycle starts all over again. So one of the things that we're trying to do is teach them in-house those life skills: conflict resolution, stress management, just how to get along, even in a family. That's where some of the bridges have been burnt down is within the family structure, that, teaching them, how to cope, with things like that. You
also run into issues where are they in a state to where they are employable? Criminal record is still a thing. A lot of employers are going to go through your criminal record pretty lengthily. Is that a word? And unfortunately, what can happen is due to excessive years in this lifestyle, due to either their mental health or substance use, lack of treatment, whatever, are they employable? Some of them, yes, and unfortunately, some of them, no. I guess the derogatory term is they fried their brain. I don't like to use it, but that's the best way to kind of explain it, is you can literally create a mental health disorder through excessive use of substances, to the point where you struggle to function in everyday society. I'm not saying, again, I'm not painting a picture of all homelessness. I'm just saying that's when you're talking about that, like John mentioned, his 10%, that demographic, not all of them are employable. You have jobs available, but are they, at what intellectual level do you need to be to sustain that job? A lot of our homeless individuals don't have a college education. Some of them may have not even completed high school. So are the jobs that are available jobs that they can do? So there are a lot of variables.
I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead to another topic that we have just a few questions on, and that's food insecurity. And I'm going to start with Angela. Are there many children in the school system that are insecure with their food and have food needs?
Yes. That's the quickest answer. We are very lucky in Hickory City Schools to where all of our students 100% eat breakfast and lunch at no cost. So that is a phenomenal program. How long we're going to be able to keep that, we're hoping for several more years, but that just shows the level of overall poverty in the district. We have over 61% that truly would qualify for free or reduced meals. But sometimes those that are just above that level, it's still a struggle for them. So we do we are offering second chance breakfast at several of our schools so that kids may come in a little bit tardy or they may still be hungry after their first round. They can go back for another round of breakfast. And then we also partner with great community organizations. Porch is phenomenal for us. They have anything and everything when kids are in need of things. The corner table, we provide our backpack program that and at least a minimum of about 50 students at each of our schools are part of the backpack program. I'm checking on numbers for next school year, this school year coming up, but Porch last year we had a lot of students or families that would participate in that program. And then throughout the school year, a family may miss Porch, or they have more children than what is needed, and we do what we can to find food. This summer, we also served, 2 weeks ago, we've served over 130,000 meals this summer through our school nutrition program between Henry Fork Park and at some of our open sites. So, yeah.
And that was going to lead me to the next question, but I'll come back to you, Casey, to add to that, which was, are the needs currently being met by agencies in the community? It might tie into what Casey was going to say.
Yes. To answer the question, I don't know that it's 100%, but I can't put this mic down without mentioning all the programs that we do have that are providing. I look to the man to my left. Salvation Army is providing meals through their shelter. They're also doing groceries through their crisis center. You have Cooperative Christian Ministries, who's doing a pantry for those with diabetes. You've got Hickory Soup Kitchen. You've got Kindness Project doing meals on the weekends. Did I say Hickory Soup Kitchen?
You did.
Hickory Soup Kitchen's corner table. I mean, it does. It really takes a village, and it's something that we are fighting, I guess, every day. You know, there are churches in our community that are attempting to fill in gaps with meals. So, are we getting everyone? No. I feel like, you know, there are outliers and probably in our county less so than those in the Hickory City limits that are probably struggling to put food on the table. But between what the school system's doing, what the nonprofits are doing, I think it's getting the word out there to our communities to let them know that these services are there. You know, letting them know that Salvation Army is doing what they're doing, and these are the times that they're providing it. So I think, yes, it's going to be an ongoing issue, but we're addressing it. We're fighting it every day.
Yeah, I definitely want to hit that topic. Food insecurity is, you know, the panic button is here on the table. I'm hitting it right now. Food insecurity in this community. Just my 5 months being here at the Crisis Help Center at Salvation Army, it's a big issue. You know, like Casey said, there are great agencies that's providing food. You know, we provide food, a box of food every 2 months. You know, if you got a family of 4 to 6, that box every 2 months don't go very far. You know, a big issue we see, and that everyone's familiar with this, with the Trump administration's cut across the board, you know, with some of the Medicaid, that's affecting across the board through Second Harvest Food Bank, which we get a lot of our food from there. A lot of agencies get food from Second Harvest. You know, the SNAP benefits, you know, been cut 10 to 20%. For every SNAP, you know, meal, that's 9 meals that SNAP has been providing, you know, equals to 1 what we can provide. So that SNAP benefits has been cut, you know, 20, 30%. Food insecurity, I'm just, as I said this morning, I'm raising an alarm right now in this community that food insecurity, you know, hopefully, you know, we all as a community can realize that is a major upcoming, you know, current and upcoming crisis that we're seeing here in this community.
Yeah. And that's exactly why we wanted to start having meetings and panel discussions like this, so that we're made aware. Yes, we see it on Facebook, we see it in the Hickory Daily Record, and we see different things. Go ahead.
Yeah, just tie in all this. You know, the cost of groceries, as we all know, you know, families are having to spend more on groceries, so that's affecting the rents, that's affecting the power bills. One of the biggest requests that we get at Salvation Army at the Crisis Center, and I'm sure some other agencies can vouch for this, is call after call is energy, rent, assistance. You know, if we don't have the pot of money, you know, afforded, then that's going to start the cycle for those folks at risk of becoming homeless, you know, because they're using more of their funds to buy groceries, and then that's affecting the rent, that's affecting the utilities.
Okay. So we know right there is a big gap, a big need, the food needs of the community, and sounds like in a lot of areas. What are some common gaps? I know we've talked about some in the system that intensify the homeless and health crisis in our community. I do want to say, before I pose this question to anyone, excuse me, I looked at the interagency list for the county, and there's right at 60 organizations, profit, nonprofit. So you would think by that number that we shouldn't have gaps, but we obviously do. I do know from my little bit of experience working with nonprofits over the past several years that the agencies seem to be connected better. And I think part of it is through this interagency, and we'll call it organization, that's probably not the right terminology, but from your perspective, and I'll start with Angela. What are the gaps you see? We've identified food insecurity, but other gaps?
And again, I'm more looking at the little people, right? And our big people too at the high school level. But it's just making sure that the families are seeing the importance of education and making sure that they have what they need to get there. Again, a lot of times with federal, state, and local funding, it's very boxed in of what it can be. We don't have a line item budget for me to go out and buy food or pay an electric bill or any of those kind of things. So that is relied a lot on donations. We do get a federal grant, $30,000 every year. We have to write it every year, and hopefully it'll keep going. But it's still limited and boxed into things that just are focused toward academics. Luckily now we can help our homeless basketball players get in shoes so that they can participate in academics. But at the same time, they need a way home after that if the parents don't have transportation and things like that. So I think it's just letting us sometimes use the money for what we see the need is instead of some of it being so boxed into what we can do. A lot of people see school as the academic side of it, but I had someone tell me today, you don't do anything with academics. And they're right, I don't know what they're teaching as far as reading and math and all of that stuff, but my side of it is to make sure they have food, make sure they get to school with transportation, make sure that they have clothing when they get there so they can feel comfortable in that, shoes on their feet, socks, which I know United Way has plenty of those right now, and different things that they can just feel a part of the school. Even little things like charging your Chromebook. We had a student, it was coming up towards testing time last year. His Chromebook was never charged when he came in the morning. Every day it was the same thing. Okay, well they were not living in a place that had electricity to be able to charge his Chromebook. So it was just working with the families to trust us. So he had a little plan after that. Every morning he just walked in, he plugged his Chromebook in, left it there throughout the day, used it while it was on the charger, just finding little creative things like that to help the kids, which also helps the families. But building that trust, I think, is huge because they don't always want to trust us. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but...
Yeah, I'll just repeat, the financial assistance probably is one of the biggest gaps I see. The Salvation Army can have a stack of funds, but those get depleted very fast. If other agencies, if we could have more, agencies, partners that would, if we have a client who has $800 power bill, we can't do all $800, but if we could do 200, they get 200 here, 100 here. We work together as a community because we all know the price of housing has gone up. The price of utilities stay the same, gas to get to work and forth, but minimum wage is still the same as it was 15, 20 years ago. So people are struggling out there, just financially struggling just to make means, that week to week. As we said, people's living paycheck to paycheck. So I think the financial part is a big gap.
Casey?
There are so many. A lot of them we've already touched on. One that I see a lot is access to medical care. Again, our medical system's backed up because of changes to the Medicaid, Medicare stuff. Again, the big ones are, of course, finance, transportation, housing. I'm trying to think of some smaller ones. I will sometimes run into folks that just need clothes for an interview. A factory job that requires steel-toe boots. But that's not something that's commonly donated to your local thrift store. A lot of our nonprofits have thrift stores that go out of their way to have some kind of voucher system that assists our homeless with just that very thing, but sometimes they just may not have it. I'm a big fella. I like to tell people the only thing that fits me in the mall is cologne and socks, because my clothes are hard to find. So you're limited in that respect. So what I will do is if I ever have any funding, I try to kind of earmark it for those small barriers that are preventing that person from that next step. And that's after I've exhausted every other avenue. It's something that I can't get anywhere else, and then I will reach into a small pot of money to do that. Trying to think, there's a lot of access to mental health services. We have some great agencies that work with us on that, but even they're limited. Their staff have to be paid. A lot of their pro bono type stuff is limited to the grant that they get to provide those services, and when those funds are gone, there may or may not be access for that person to have mental health or substance use treatment. Yeah.
Andrew?
And I just thought about it, I'm sorry, but some, like dental and vision. We have, thankfully, Contegra Dental Bus comes and visits our schools. We had, if I'm trying to remember the numbers correctly, I may be off a little bit, but we had over 488 students that were served through the dental bus last year, which is great. It's a good thing, but then that's that prolonged care. And keeping up with all of those things. And then vision, of course, if you can't see, it's kind of hard to learn to read. So it's just trying to make sure that they're getting those kinds of services as well.
There are so many. I'm going to just talk specifically about housing, though. I did have multiple thoughts as we were talking. We don't have a fair housing office in this county. We don't have a dedicated fair housing agent in this county to look after the things that are happening with people. That would be something that would be of huge benefit to folks. Habitat is one of the very few organizations in the county dedicated to providing affordable housing. And we don't have a lot of those organizations. We don't have the infrastructure in place to build more affordable housing. Because we don't have a plan as a municipality to build affordable housing. So that is something that we need. We need a housing study in this county to find out what are the needs housing-wise of this county, and then we need a housing plan so we can put something together and have. We would also need a dedicated stream of funding to put that plan into place. But there are municipalities around the country who have commissioned studies, created plans, and found a dedicated source of funding. And they are providing affordable housing for folks. It's not something we have here.
Are there any questions from the audience? If so, just hold up your card and Nancy or Sandy will bring them up and we'll go through those. Before we start on that, I am going to ask, I'll start with Andrew. If you could wave a magic wand, what other solutions, tools would you want in your toolbox in regards to your position?
It was partially mentioned here already. A massive resource for us has been federal and state funding to be able to run our programs. And much of that has gone away already under the current rules and bills that have been passed. There is much more of it that's on the chopping block. So we are at risk of losing funding, and we are having to make really tough decisions. The magic wand might be a billionaire comes along and gives us a ton of money. or it might be for us as a nation, as a state, to start buckling down and really thinking about what we want to do with our tax dollars, what we want our government to do.
Casey?
One of the biggest things for me, and I think for law enforcement, if I had that magic wand, if it had the power to convince someone with mental health and substance use disorder to actually seek treatment. Unfortunately, we run into a lot of folks that just, for whatever reason, opt out of some life-saving programs that, whether they're just, I call it rock bottom, if they haven't hit rock bottom to the point where they want to seek recovery. The ones that really pull at my heartstrings are those that are suffering from a mental health disorder, that are too paranoid to seek treatment. That medication, does this to me, or, that agency just wants to, mistreat me. And a lot of folks that I interact with are suffering from some severe mental health disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, sometimes both. Not to mention, forms of dementia and things like that. And unfortunately, we live in a society now to where those days of guys in white coats pulling up and putting you in a van and taking you to a facility just does not work anymore. So it's, in some cases, it's a revolving door of seeing the same folks over and over again, because we just unfortunately can't seem to get through to them that, hey, this program will change your life, literally. But they just, with their mental health or excessive use of substances, they don't think clearly enough. And there's just not a way to, I hesitate to use the word force them, but to force them into treatment, force them into a mental health facility. It's something that frustrates us as law enforcement, of just the recidivism of seeing the same folks over and over again, knowing that if they would just say yes, we can start that ball rolling, and we can, so yeah, that would be one of the biggies for me.
Yeah, my magic wand would definitely not be build bigger shelters. People come to me like, if I had $1 million, I would build the biggest shelter and we would get everybody off the streets. That's not the magic wand. I could build, 8,000 bed facility, and we'd still be here the same night, same time, talking about the same issues. I agree with Andrew. We do need more input with the city and the county leaderships, with the local government. They need to be on board, with, what they allow. Before I took this job, I did take a little sabbatical for 3 years, and I drove a motor coach across the country. I went through every big city in this nation. We all hear San Francisco and Los Angeles. Well, I was in each one of those cities the last 3 years, and go see those and those folks in that community are hoping for a magic wand, but it takes a community, it takes the right leadership, from top down leadership. I just believe it's going to be the community working together, hand in hand. At the Salvation Army, I've been there 5 months, but we need volunteers. We need folks to come in and build those relationships. Let these individuals know that a community is behind them. One of the programs, and I'm not pitching any fundraising tonight, but it's a sponsor bed. But the big part of that is, just come in and lay a note on the bed, so when a resident comes in that night, they say, someone's praying for me tonight. Someone brought a devotion for me that raises their self-esteem up. That gives them hope. You know, hope's a big word. And hope is probably the magic wand that we need.
Goodness, I go a lot back to what Casey was talking about with the mental health. There's such a stigma against getting mental health treatment or what you need in that form, and that's okay. I mean, getting mental health therapy and all of those needs met, that's huge. And another thing I put down, I was writing my notes as I'm going, but it's just building connections and being connected in that if Casey has one of our parents out he finds, then letting us know so that we can make sure we're doing what we need to do on our side, and partnering with the shelters, just partnering with other agencies and building those connections. And of course, the magic wand of funding would be wonderful, but above that, you can have all the money in the world, and there's still going to be some people, if they don't get the mental health needs met, they're still going to be eventually in a homeless situation. So training and teaching, not just enabling.
Thank you. So I do have several questions from the audience, and I'll start with them. I don't want to keep everyone much longer, but I know these questions are important. So I'll ask a question, and maybe if just one of the panelists can answer it, and that might help us move a little bit quicker, and I'll try to tailor the question to the appropriate panelist. So the first one, what do you think about some of the tiny homes community that are developing on the West Coast to house the homeless? And I'm going to ask Casey about this one, because I'm almost sure he was recently, and you all may have been, in a meeting that this came up, like in the last week or so. Casey, am I asking a fair question of you?
So, I have to be very careful because I work for the city.
So maybe I should let John answer
No,
it.
well, I will. And I'm gonna give a very vague answer in that, and this goes across the board, not specifically tiny homes, but just housing in all forms, whether it be shelter, transitional housing, whatever. In my experience, it comes down to how well the program is run. You know, it's who's facilitating that program. You know, the fear, I think, for some community members is, are we going to build something that is going to negatively affect our community? Whether that be, because there's correlations between poverty and crime. Law enforcement have to look at, I'm just giving facts. You know, our highest crime area is the Ridgeview community, which is a very impoverished community of folks with these issues. And so there's so many aspects to that. And the thing that a lot of the community doesn't necessarily understand about a municipality is the homeless demographic's only a small fraction of the people they serve. They serve every community member there. So it's finding that balance. What I will say is, if you're talking to a municipality, you need to find out you got to sell it to them. How does it benefit them? And unfortunately for some folks, and I'm not saying this about the city of Hickory because I'll be unemployed tomorrow, that's not the only driver, but for some people in our community, as community members, people in our city, you have to explain to them what's the incentive for them. For some people in our community, love them or hate them, it's about the visibility of homelessness. It's not necessarily because they want to help people, it's because that homeless person sitting there is affecting my economic growth at my business. And I get it. It's not why we do what we do, but so sometimes you have to look at that when you're pitching that kind of thing. I will not comment specifically on tiny homes, but I think for me, it's the programming, it's how it's run. We have to look at visibility of it. Some of those same people, the meeting you were referring to, they specifically talked about curb appeal and maintaining the property, and I think that's key. If the organization that maintains it doesn't keep it up, it becomes a major problem.
Yeah, and having a program, a process for life skills that we know we have agencies that provide that
Right.
would tie into the success of
Absolutely.
what could be considered tiny homes or a form of transitional housing. So thank you, Casey. Andrew, this one's for you. Is the skill level for habitat repair the same as new builds? Meaning, is a foreman with skills and several unskilled volunteers?
I have two separate answers. Does the person who asked that question want to identify themselves? Are you asking because you'd like to volunteer with the repairs program? Wonderful. I would love to give you my card. Yes, there are foremen on site who will train you how to do things with the repairs program. We do usually want people to have a little bit of knowledge to some degree. A lot of the folks on our new builds, they'll come and we'll work with them, and they've never picked up a hammer before. It's not going to quite work with the repairs program. You do need to have a little bit of skill. But for the most part, our folks can teach you how to work with that program. And we desperately need volunteers.
Yeah, I think the panel's working tonight, yeah. I should say the session. This one's for you as well, Andrew. How long does Habitat stay in touch with new home owners to educate for success in life skills?
We are with our homeowners and their children and their grandchildren till the end. We started 40 years ago. I am helping grandchildren right now figure out how to make repairs on the home. I'm helping children figure out, well, mom and dad, the original buyer, passed away. Now they have an estate. What do we do to take care of the estate? I'm helping older homeowners work through end-of-life issues, long-term care issues. We are with our folks to the end. And the reason for that is that the relationship that we have, that those relationships that we can build with folks, make people more successful homeowners long-term. It's something that unfortunately has fallen away in our neighborhoods in general. We tend to not quite have the relationship that we used to with our neighbors or with the people down the road. And that's not the case with Habitat neighborhoods. People know their neighbors. People stay in touch. We stay in touch with them. It makes for more successful neighborhoods. It makes for more successful homeowners.
Angela, how can the church help unhoused children?
With the unhoused children, it's just helping us make sure they're getting their needs met academically and emotionally and all of those kinds of things. I think it doesn't just go with the children, but it also goes to how can they help the parents as well, and that, partnering with these folks as well. So as far as unhoused children, we used to have a fund to help pay for lunch money, right? We don't need that right now because we're 100% no cost. But some of it is still individualized needs. Is it a child that wants to, football season is here, play football, but they don't have the right tools for that, the shoes, the whatever it is? Is it a child that wants to be in the orchestra or the band, and that's something that could really keep them connected to school, but they can't always afford some of the things that are needed? Tutoring, lunch buddies with them, just really building up their self-esteem and things like that helps as well.
Let's see, I think this one will go to Casey. What is life in our tent communities like as far as water, sewage, and safety?
in most cases, extremely unsafe. And what I will encourage a lot of folks that have a need to give back to our homeless community, in my opinion, it is not by going out to homeless camps. I go out in them, but I go with law enforcement. But we also have extensive experience going to those camps, because you're talking about what I call sharps, which are needles and razors and things like that. You've got broken glass. You've got other drug paraphernalia. You've got human waste. Frankly, in the last couple years, we've started seeing booby traps, fishing lines, things cut into points and driven into the ground, and so it's frankly it's unsafe. So all the more reason for us to encourage those homeless, unhoused, to get into programs like the Salvation Army and other shelter and transitional housing programs. We have deaths in homeless camps all the time. I hesitate to guess, but it's probably somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen a year of homeless individuals passing away, either due to overdose or a combination of overdose and exposure to the elements. It's not a safe environment. For whatever reason, there's a correlation between homelessness and hoarding. A lot of these camps, folks are hoarding things, maybe in an attempt to recycle, but it's typically a tent or a sleeping bag, or a tent and sleeping bag, or tarps. And not to mention the dangers of, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, you have bad people in our homeless community too. The number of homeless females that have been sexually assaulted is astronomical. Half of them hesitate or do not report it because that so-called man that assaulted them is their safety, that he's quote unquote protecting them. In some cases, I equate it to almost an apocalyptic environment. You see these movies where it's after a world-ending event, an apocalypse. That's what a lot of these homeless camps look like. So I encourage communities that partner with a Salvation Army, CCM, if you want to give back Kindness Project. I don't encourage community members just to go traipsing through the woods and because again, you're dealing with a lot of mental health, and folks you can trigger them pretty quickly just sneaking up on them. And again, at the end of the day, you have to remember that in Hickory, homeless camps are on other people's private property, so they are trespassing. Technically, you are also trespassing when you go onto that property. So it's just a bad idea as far as we're concerned to do that. So did that answer your question?
I think it does. I will ask a little more to that. It was just part of a question that's here posed, but about trafficking in the homeless camps, but in Hickory. And I know that's a topic all of its own. So just the question is, do we have many people in Hickory, homeless or not, being trafficked? That. And maybe this doesn't really fit into this conversation, but in regards to homeless, I think maybe it does.
I think it depends on your definition. of trafficking, to my knowledge, we are not seeing sex trafficking like you see in other parts of the nation. And I think about the corridor there from, the southern border up through the Midwest into the Colorados and all that kind of stuff. Does it trickle out this way? Sure. Do we have homeless people that are also involved in prostitution? Yes. Are they being forced to do that? Probably. It's something that's hard to necessarily calculate because, again, in our homeless population, that person may be doing a lot of that just, for their own personal safety. I have to let him treat me that way or he won't protect me anymore, so to speak. So for law enforcement, there's a difference between prostitution and human trafficking. And so we, to my knowledge, at the Hickory Police Department have not really experienced any human trafficking as of yet. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. I could see it being very viable being on this Highway 40 corridor. It's just not being reported to us. And then again, we have state and federal agencies that that's their bread and butter. I mean, they're out, because there's a major correlation between sex trafficking and drugs. A lot of your cartels are doing both, and sometimes at the same time. So, that's why a lot of times when you're talking about narcotics in law enforcement, the same officers that do drug interdiction and stuff are also doing prostitution, sex trafficking, and all that kind of stuff because there's a correlation.
We have some great questions here. I'm going to ask just a couple more, and the ones that I don't ask of the panel tonight, I'll get out to the panel and I'll get answers. We had everyone sign in, but I think I've touched on most of the topics or the questions in the topics. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything that we haven't touched on. Angela, you mentioned that food and clothes are an issue. Is there some kind of network in place, email, links to churches or nonprofits so people can reach out when specific needs arise?
A lot of it comes through our school counselors, and then we work very closely with Grace Space here. Safe Harbor has their little place we go down and gets clothing as well, but a lot of times it's just a matter of the school counselors coming to me. I have a little, it's growing a little bit, but that's okay. We have a little room over at our main office that we do keep clothing for families, and if kids come in, the high school always has a prom closet. So it's just a lot of communication back and forth in that way. We have a process internally where the counselors know who to contact for what or who has the most of what. We have one school that ends up with a grant some years for shoes. So it's just, we know that's where to go if we need shoes. Communicating back and forth with us. We've tried some more formalized programs in the past. There's Purposity and different things like that. But sometimes those needs come in at the moment, all of a sudden, and it's not always easy to just go out and have a collection of jeans because they could range from a 2T up to a 4X, I guess they're making jeans, I don't know, but from really small to really big. So a lot of times it's individual needs. So sometimes just the monetary donations and then the counselors going out and purchasing what they need, or either the social workers that are there. And again, a lot of it's word of mouth and through our school counselors and social workers.
Andrew, how long of a wait is there for housing repair assistance, and who qualifies?
For the repairs program, both of our programs operate in application rounds. So there would only be the availability to apply for the program when there was an open application round. So for the repairs program right now, it's probably about a year out that we would be before we would have another application round. To qualify, you need to own your home. The value of the home does need to be below a certain level, and your income does need to be below a certain level. Other than that, it's pretty much just a question of, can we make the repair? There are certain repairs we just can't do. We're not equipped to deal with lead paint, or with major mold issues, or major foundational issues. So it's just a question of what can we do?
And a question that ties to Habitat as well. What are the requirements for someone to apply for a Habitat home? And I guess that goes back to the open application time, but...
That is we do have that time frame. Well, so Habitat is a bank, and so we are subject to all of the same laws and rules that any other bank would be, which means that anyone could come and apply for a mortgage through Habitat. And we have certain financial underwriting guidelines that we look at, and if you qualify for those financial underwriting guidelines, then you'd be welcome to buy a Habitat house.
And John, this one I think would be for you. Do you drug test?
Yes, during the individual's first intake, when they come into the shelter, they are drug tested, and we randomly drug test around 4 individuals per week. If we have suspicion, we do have the tools and ability to breathalyze individuals based on their behavior, but yes, we do drug test every individual.
Again, we have some really good questions. Some of these are more specific to individual programs, individual nonprofit programs that are offered. So I think in the interest of time, because I had said I was going to hold this to an hour, and I have not done that. I'm surprised my husband hadn't started waving at me yet. Oh, he is. But the questions that I have that we have not answered, I'll get to the panel and we will get you answers back. Hopefully everybody did sign in. So we have email addresses, and we'll just send it out to everybody as far as the questions. Again, thank everyone for being here, but especially thank you to our panel participants. You've been great. We were so fortunate that when we chose the topics, we asked 4 people. They all said yes. They're all here. They've done a great job. We hope that this is going to be the first of other meetings, maybe a different format, different topics, but I really, really appreciate everyone being here, especially all of you. So thank you. And there's cookies, please, cookies, brownies, decaf coffee, and